I dropped my bow. I had a 10 millimeter in my pack, so I reached around in my holster underneath my arm, had my 10 millimeter ready. My buddy Mike had a 45, and then Cody, my buddy behind me, all he had was his bow. So he knocked an arrow, and the three of us were in there, standing there in a triangle. And we were just waiting because this bear was coming right at us. And all of a sudden I could see the silhouette of his head come through. It was nothing short of 10 paces, that brown bear. And we figured him to be at least a 9-foot brown bear coming to us. So, yeah, it was, I would say, one of the most nerve-wracking times I've ever been in the woods. I was shaking and my heart didn't stop racing for 30 minutes after that. Welcome to the R&A Outdoors podcast, fueled by Ripcord Arrow Rest and First Light Hunting Apparel. At R&A, we are public land DIY conservationists that love to share our passion for the outdoors. So join us and our team as we interview professionals in the industry to share insight knowledge that helps make hunters and anglers more successful. Hey listeners, subscribers, and fellow outdoorsmen and women. This is your host, Lucas Paw, and I'm excited to tell you about some of the sponsors that continue to help make this podcast not only happen, but grow and thrive in this digital world of audio content. This podcast is brought to you by Ripcord Arrow Rest, the bow hunter's #1 fall-away rest on the market. Ripcord is known for 100% full-time arrow containment and their patented drop-dead brake system that eliminates launcher bounce back. Best of all, Ripcord is backed by their rock-solid guarantee. If the original owner has a part break for any reason, it will be repaired or replaced at no charge. And did I mention? Ripcord is located in southwest Montana, where all their products are made with pride in America. Check them out at ripcordarrowrest.com and on their social media feeds. This podcast is brought to you by First Light Clothing and Hunting Apparel. Born in the Rockies in central Idaho, First Light's mission is to create simple, yet proven, versatile gear that provides comfort and performance in any situation while working to promote the pursuit of ethical hunting and stewardship. I recently joined the First Light Pro Staff team and have continued to be impressed year after year in their innovations in engineering of merino wool fabrics. 10 years ago, they started putting out wool fabrics with camo patterns, and immediately this changed the game. Since then, they offer multiple layering systems and kits in various proprietary patterns and continue to raise the bar with their competition. Find them online at firstlight.com or under their social media feeds. Go farther, stay longer.
Hi, welcome to the Interviews with the Hunting Masters, brought to you by the Sneak Tech Sneak Boot. Today we're going to do a little recap of the season, little storytelling session with my buddy Lucas Paw. And Lucas runs a podcast, R&A Outdoors. So he's no stranger to the podcasting. So what's going on, man?
How you doing, John? Good talking to you, man. How you doing?
I'm like I said a little bit earlier here right before we got on. I'm a little beat up.
Yeah.
I went sheep hunting I was only there for 4 days, but it was a lot of getting up really, really, really early because we were staying pretty far, like almost 2 hours from where we were hunting. And we traveled a lot. Like I did 34 miles on my quad in one day.
Wow. That's
I
covered a lot
almost
of
rather
country.
hike 10 miles than ride 34 miles on a quad.
Yeah, that could be rough.
Yeah, it's all just broke up, nasty country. But it's kind of a necessity over there. You have to be able to like stick and move.
Sure.
That and I got a freaking eye infection, which sucks.
Oh, even better.
You down there, and the crap is in my eyes, and then riding the quad, and yeah. So, and I didn't bring my goggles, so I was just wearing sunglasses, which was stupid of me.
Well, all you had to do was say you went sheep hunting, so I think we all understand you're beat up a little bit. Nothing easy about that.
You know what? Honestly, desert sheep hunting isn't really. People always think, "Oh, I'm going to go sheep hunting. I'm going to be climbing the mountains," and the way Arizona is mostly, it's all these sky islands.
Sure.
You know, these mountains that are, just seem to jet up from the flats, and you kind of just keep driving around the mountain and glassing up. Yeah, when you find a sheep, you're going after it. But I was just a spotter, so I wasn't climbing shit.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, so
that's awesome.
It wasn't too physically demanding. It was more mentally. Just, I had that same tag 2 years ago, and I had a completely different experience. Plus, I scouted a lot more. So,
sure.
My cousin Anthony, unfortunately, he doesn't have the time off and whatever, and the freedom to go and do the scouting. So he only got down there once, I think, maybe twice, and really didn't turn much up. So he was kind of relying on me and all. We went to a lot of the spots that I hunted, and the sheep just aren't really in there, at least not the big ones. I did get down there one time for him, and we glassed up a really, really big, like a world-class ram, and he was in the same area that I shot my sheep. And when we went back down there, so that was in October when I found him. I hadn't been there since October. He is now on military that's restricted that I couldn't get to.
Gotcha.
I refound him, and he's just an absolute stud. He'd probably be the biggest sheep that ever taken out of that unit.
Wow.
Or pretty near close anyway. So.
Interesting. Yeah, here in California, we've got quite a few, opportunities for sheep. And you talk about military, the Oricopia unit down kind of on the southwest end of California. That's the unit that, Goliath was taken out of. There's a military range there that ram had actually gotten onto into the Chocolate Mountains. And when they get back in there, you can't hunt them. And they had lost that ram. Keek had actually lost that ram for over a year, and then they turned it back up the year Jason had that tag. And but just a neat story. But when those animals get caught up on those military bases, if you can't get access on them, they've got water, they've got feed, they've got everything they need there. They're never going to leave, so that makes it tough.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. We talked to a BLM guy too. He said a lot of them, because they didn't really need. They're usually in where I hunted them because of water, and because we got some late rains here, and they got a bunch of green up on the other side. They're not tied to it, so that's why they aren't staying.
Yeah.
There's a lot of OHV use right there, so
that'll drive them out for sure.
Yeah, it's year round, and they'll put up with it if they have to, because they have to stay there for water. But when they don't need to be there, they're out.
Yeah, so. Gotcha. Well,
so
cool, man.
Had a pretty busy hunting season so far.
Yeah. This year was nothing short of a marathon, if you want to call it that. Just I guess tell listeners a little bit about myself. Yeah. So you were saying I do host a podcast, R&A Outdoors. We've been doing it just under 3 years now. So it's been fun to, catch up with people in the industry and talk about hunting, talk about, a lot of different types of things that we all love to do. So this year, specifically, I typically start my time out in the spring. So, basically from now until like March I consider my off season, so I'm rehabbing my legs, trying to get my body back from the torture that I put on it basically from summer through fall. But here in California, the beauty of California is there's a lot of species to hunt here in California. Most people are going to say, as a non-resident, I'm never going to go to California and hunt. But John, as you know, you come out and blacktail hunt, with us out here every year. So there's a lot of opportunity for non-residents to come out and hunt. You're not going to be able to hunt the elk and the sheep species unless you're really, really lucky and potentially draw one of those tags. But year round we can hunt wild pigs here. So the pig hunting is just a lot of fun. And I'm a guide here as well. So I take folks out on occasion, and then we do some selected pig hunts. In the spring, the Rio Grande turkey is always fun to chase. We've got a great turkey flock here on the Central Coast.
Turkey over there.
Yeah. So in the springtime, in the springtime, there's just a ton of stuff to do, and that pig hunting will run typically into the early part of the summer when the crop heads out, and then from there they kind of go nocturnal. So, basically from like March till July, we're chasing turkeys and pushing pigs around. And then in July of this year, I went to Africa. So I took my first African safari with Eland Safaris in Limpopo on the northern end of South Africa, and just had a phenomenal time. There was a group of 8 of us that went across the pond, and we just had a great time. I think in the group of 8, I think we took 48 animals in total.
Jesus.
There was 4 archery hunters, including a female. One of my good friends' wife.
You did it with the bow, right?
Yeah. So
I saw a lot of the pictures.
Yeah, I connected on 9 animals there, all with my bow, and just a couple pieces from that. The African experience with a bow is a little different. It's not like hunting Western big game, here in the Western states, but
blind over water.
Yeah, when you go to Africa, you sit in a blind and you sit over water, and it's a part of their hunting culture and heritage and why they do that. And part of me was thinking, man, I want to get out and walk around and actually see this country. But when you realize that's how they do it, you tend to respect their culture. So so we sat water, and it was obviously nerve-wracking and trying to read books and other things to keep track of time. But we just saw an awesome array of animals. First animal came into water was a really nice impala ram. Connected on that. Next day, I doubled on my kudu. I shot a kudu, and then I also got my warthog. Just had a phenomenal day. That kudu I shot was almost a 57-inch kudu. So just a really nice representative species of the animal. Next day, I hunted an Inyala and Blesbuck on the same water hole, doubled down on that one as well. So I was here at day 3, and I'd already put 5 animals in the salt, which is what they say in South Africa, because they put all the heads in a big salt bay. So after that, I was going to be a little more selective because we were there for 8 days, and then I went out and shot another nice impala, hunted a Gemsbok, and ended up getting a 40-inch female Gemsbok, which is, if you know much about Gemsbok, the 40-inch club is something that people most of their life will never ever get into, and I had no idea what that was until I was sitting on this water hole, and my PH, who was just an awesome guy, basically was pointing. We were trying to shoot a bull, but he wanted me to take this female, so I did, and she measured out at over 40 inches. So just a giant representative of a Gemsbok. And then my last 2 hunts, I got to say, were probably my favorite, and they were all on the same day. I doubled down on the same day. We went, and I had gotten a baboon permit to hunt baboons. So most people are like, yeah, why do you want to go hunt a baboon? Well, when you go to South Africa, there are 2 species in South Africa you actually have to apply for permits for, and that's a baboon and a monkey. So I wasn't too hip on monkeys, but baboon definitely was something I thought, well, for $50, I might as well do it. So we went over to this hunting concession that has a big problem with baboons, actually, to the extent that they're they're depredizing crops. They're doing a lot of things to really impact the livelihood of the African people there. So basically they say, if you got a permit, come and shoot as many of them as you want. Well, I had my bow, so I wasn't going to be too picky, but we sat on our first stand, and we had a big female come in, and you have to shoot males there. So the female would come in, grab a few tomatoes, and get right off the patch because I think she'd had a few arrows flung at her, or at least, or maybe her boyfriends had a few arrows flung at her in the past. And then we heard just a shrill, just really loud kind of squeal in the bush, and this big male baboon came walking out, and he walked right in. And the funny thing about them is they're very skittish. So when you sit in a blind, we were sitting over water in a tomato pile. They can see everything. So we're in black in the shooting lane, and the actual blind was so small that I basically almost had to take my stabilizer off because you have to get so close to make sure you don't hit the actual blind when you're shooting. But I had this baboon come in. He came right into about 30 yards, and he was sitting there. And I was had enough angle, and I shot, and I put one right through his shoulder and just piled him up. And I don't know why it was one of my favorite hunts, but they had never had anyone take a baboon with a bow in their concession. So, when I told them I was doing that, they were thinking, well, it can be done, but we've never had anybody do it. We've had people try, so I thought that was pretty cool to do that. And then my last hunt that I did was an evening hunt, and it was for a steam buck. So the steam buck, like the dick, they're a small antelope species. They average anywhere from 12 to 15 pounds full size, right? So we went out in the evening and did a night hunt with a spotlight. And again, I took my bow, and they're saying, well, we have definitely never taken anyone out at night to try to shoot something with a bow. I said, well, that just makes me even more motivated to go out and do that, right?
Challenge accepted.
Exactly. So we go out, we start turning up quite a few rams, and the funny thing about the steam buck is they are nocturnal species, so they're out all the way through the night, and as you're driving through these fields, when the truck stops, like any animal, they get skittish, right? But when the truck keeps moving, they just kind of hang out, and they're not as concerned. Well, which made me believe in my head I was going to have to make a moving shot while the vehicle was moving on this steam buck. So we turned up this ram with a small U, anyway, long story short, I had 3 arrows in my quiver. I had already launched 2 at this same ram, and he was at about 48 yards. And again, mind you, it's pitch dark. I got my Luminoc on, so that's about the only thing I can see. And the spotlight is sitting on this ram. So I shoot, and the Luminoc goes right over his head. And I think we misjudged range. He runs across the truck and goes out and stops at 38 yards while the truck's just slowly moving. Had my second to last arrow, and I just piled him right in the front shoulder at 38 yards, and he went maybe 20 yards and piled up. And it started raining, and we were all out there, and the landowner was with us. One of my good buddies, Jason Quick, who is also a co-host on my podcast, was with me. It was just an awesome night. It was just so much fun, and to take an animal with a bow, and people are saying, yeah, we've never had anyone do that. It was a pretty big accomplishment. So anyway, yeah, that was number 9, and at that point, I was done. I had actually vision to go and do Cape Buffalo, and that just fell through midway through the hunt. Weren't able to get on any buffalo. So I think my next trip back is going to do buffalo with my bow. So anyway, nice. Africa was just a blast. And, if you've never been, I think it's one of those places that you got to go once in your life. It doesn't mean you got to go again and again and again, but I think everyone needs to experience Africa. The culture and the diversity of wildlife is just incredible there. You'll sit on a watering hole and have 20 to 30 different species of animals come in a matter of an hour. It's just incredible. Yeah. So
it's crazy.
Yeah. So so that kind of takes me right up to July. So after Africa, and as you know, John, here in California, our deer season starts the second weekend in July, and that's in the A zone. So I live in the A zone, the central part of California. So we're literally archery hunting the second weekend in July all the way through August here on the coast. And we're chasing, blacktails. They're kind of a hybrid Columbia mule deer hybrid blacktail deer here on the coast. During the time of July, they're in velvet. So, from an archer standpoint, it's a little more lucrative to get in and more conducive for archery hunters. And in the last few years, it's been great. We've had good rain. We've had good feed. So the crop of deer have been really good. This last year, I hunted I put it down on the calendar. I think I hunted for 27 days after the same buck. It was a nice 3x3, and on that last day, I arrowed him. He was in velvet. I was watching him from velvet. Couldn't get on him in velvet. Took him all the way into hardhorn. got an arrow in him, and hit him good, really good, and just never did recover him, and was very unfortunate because it was one of those things where, when you get this buck on a trail cam and you're watching him, right, and then you hunt him through velvet, and then you hunt him up until almost the last week of the season, finally get an opportunity, and I thought I hit him really good, and I think I may have hit him a little high, and just didn't get him recovered. It was kind of bittersweet at the end that I didn't end up tagging him, but it was definitely a fun chase during that time. So.
Yeah.
So,
how are you typically hunting them?
I'm all spot and stock. So,
okay.
yeah. So, most of the areas, obviously in California, a lot of what we hunt here is private land, which holds a lot of the deer. But there's a military base here on the coast that allows you to go and hunt. It's about 200,000 acres, and I shot my 3x3 last year on that military base. So I hunt that a lot, and then there's also some public land going out to the forest to the west of there that holds a lot of deer as well. So I stick to that area, and I hunt that pretty hard. I'm out there, basically all summer scouting, looking at putting trail cams up, trying to find turn-up deer, and just go places that, no one else is going to go. And that's the one thing about California. There's a lot of people that like to hunt. They just don't really hunt like Western big game, right? They don't get off the roads.
Right.
They drive the roads. They may get out a little bit and take a little walk, but really all you got to do is get off the beaten path a little bit on some of that public land, and you'll turn up some good deer. So,
nice.
Yeah. So
you're always sending me pics after I got skunked in California of shit that you've shot there.
I'm like, John, come down here
just to rub it in, just to rub it in a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and you've had some. I wouldn't say obviously you've had ultimate success on putting a tag on a deer, but you've seen a lot of deer, and you've had.
Oh yeah.
You've obviously had some opportunities, and
Yeah, it just keeps falling apart for me at the last moment. I don't know. Like, I think it's mostly in my head at this point, and I'm just I'm my own worst enemy.
Yeah.
So I want it too bad. So I keep making stupid mistakes.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, and it's like anything. If you lived out here, you'd obviously know where to hunt, where the bucks are. But when you're on a 7 to 10 day slam and you got to get out there and get it done, the pressure, there's obviously pressure there to get it done. So
I've never hunted more than 6 days.
Okay.
Consecutively.
Gotcha.
Here, yeah. Over there, rather.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, so then, we kind of go into September. In September, I drew a limited entry New Mexico tag this year for elk. So, that was definitely high priority on my list. I made a trip out in August and scouted for 4 days, put some trail cameras up, had some local intel, and got some folks that also had drawn the tag previously and just got a lot of information. But before that, I always go back to Montana. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Montana, basically 18 years of my life, and then went to college in Butte, Montana for another 4 years. So I spent my whole childhood growing up in north central Montana. So if anyone knows a little town called Chinook, it's up on the High Line. It's about 20 miles south of the Canadian border. A town thriving of maybe 800 people right now, small little Class C school. But interesting part about that area is it sits right on the Milk River. So those that know much about whitetail hunting, at least in the western part of the United States, know that the Milk River holds, or what has held, some of the biggest whitetails, in the western U.S. So, we spent a lot of our younger years hunting the Milk River Valley, and it was just so much fun. I mean, I remember the days, and it's the old pictures that you wish you had of, the 3 or 4 170, 180 class whitetails in the back of the truck, right? And you just stack them up. You'd go out, 3, 4 guys would go out, and you'd stack up these bucks. Now it's not so much that way anymore. Those bucks are still there, but it's just not like it used to be. But there's still some great potential and great genetics there on the Milk River. So, yeah, so I go back every year, visit my family, and when I do that, I take part in that native non-resident program Montana does. So if you were born in Montana, did your hunter safety there, and you have a relative, which my mom and my brother both live there, you can go back and basically hunt at just over resident rates. So it makes sense to go back and do my elk and my deer hunt. So I went back in September and archery hunted, and we just had a great time. Again, there's a group of about 7 or 8 of us that kind of hook up, and some have to work during the week, some come out during the week, but I'm there kind of on a 7 to 8 day deal. and we hunted our hearts out. I did get an arrow and a really nice 6-point this year, and tracked him for basically that day, got on blood the next day, and just was never able to turn him up, unfortunately. So
2 in 1 year. That
yeah,
sucks.
two in 1 year, man. And yeah, it was tough, because you go out, and when you're hunting in Montana, it's all public land. We're hunting public land, and it's big country, but we're in areas that hold a lot of elk, and we saw a lot of elk this year, just didn't have a lot of opportunities, and I had basically my one opportunity during archery season. It was 38 yards, and he was a good size 6-point, and he was pushing quite a few cows, and thought I made a good shot, but I think again I was just a little bit high. I think I may only clipped one lung, and he got away. So that was kind of bummer. But after that, so I kind of made a bonsai run. So I went up to Montana, then I drove straight down to New Mexico. It was about a 4,000-mile, 20-day trip that I took, and spent the next 9 days in New Mexico. And it was interesting because Randy Newberg had the same tack as I did in the 1st to the 15th part of the season. So I connected with him a couple days before his season ended, and hunted with him, stayed in camp, and we had been sharing a lot of information leading up to the hunt anyway, kind of what he was hearing, what I was hearing, are the elk moved in, what are they seeing for water and that kind of stuff. So that was fun to hunt with him. It was fun to share camp with him. There's a lot of things that, Randy does for us public land hunters, that I think we all take for granted from a conservation standpoint. So it was fun to catch up with him and do that. So then my hunt started, and if I could explain my hunt in one word, this unit is a top 5 unit in New Mexico, and it's known. It produced the state record 3 years ago. It's known for having big bulls, and I was just disappointed, unfortunately, and I wasn't disappointed to the fact that I didn't see elk. Every day I was into, bulls morning and evening. Bugling was just off the hook. So I had the tag from the 15th to the 24th of September.
That was the better part of it, yeah.
Yeah, so, the elk were really quiet during Randy's hunt, but when it was like a light switch went off on the 15th, every single night I was woken up at 2 a.m. by bulls just screaming their lungs out. And it was just unfortunate because I never saw one bull over 300 inches. And I wasn't there to shoot a raghorn. Now, hindsight looking back, I could have shot a raghorn. I could have shot some smaller 5-points, but I was there, to try to find, a bull that I wouldn't find probably in any other unit, and just never found that bull. And unfortunately, didn't even draw my bow back in 8 days there, 9 days including a travel day. But still, I had 2 of my good buddies there for a portion of it, and then I hunted solo by myself for the next 5 days. And again, wasn't a lack of trying or a lack of effort or a lack of elk. It was just didn't see anything that I got excited about, and packed up my camp on the last day and drove home. So anyway, again, that hunt wasn't measured by, tagging. I think it was still success, and I would definitely try to draw that tag again if I could. Just again, was just not overly, excited about how that hunt ended, but it was still a lot of fun. So September was a busy month for me, for sure.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, and then a trip that, something that I've been wanting to do my whole life, and my brother and I have been talking about it, and we just happened to get an opportunity. Austin Atkinson reached out to me last year and said, hey, we do this hunt on Kodiak Island. We take 8 to 10 guys. Is this something that you'd be interested in? And I was like, yeah, very interested in. So I got, Austin and I got in contact, and so of course we booked that. My brother and I ended up doing that hunt, and one of my childhood best friends, a buddy of mine who's just an avid bow hunter, went, and we did Kodiak Island, and probably one of the highlights of my year was that hunt. For a lot of different reasons. One, because I think Kodiak Island is just a special place. If you've never been there, this is, again, another bucket list item.
It's a bucket list for me. Yeah,
I mean, most people will never be able to afford to hunt a brown bear on that island, but to go and hunt deer on that island, you can get up to 3 deer tags. They're, $300 to $400 a piece, and It's all DIY. It's all public land. You use a charter service. They'll skiff you out onto the island, and then you go and you hunt like you know how to hunt, right? And that was the fun of it, was the fact that we spent, 7 days on that island catching a bunch of halibut. There was 10 of us on the boat. I think we shot 15 or 16 bucks. And the funny thing was we had gone basically 6 days, and everyone had shot a deer but me. But I was bow hunting. So, bow hunting the island is interesting because, that island is very dense. And what I mean by dense is when you get inland more in the bay areas, and we were actually in and out of Larson Bay. It was kind of the area that we were geographically in. That island is just so thick with alders and Devil's Club and that muskeg, and you will spend 3 to 4 hours just to gain 1,000 to 1,500 feet elevation. It's just unbelievable, and you can't explain it. You can't explain it unless you do it. But once you get above that scrub, just that scrubby alder stuff, and you get up into that more greener, flatter area, it's some of the most amazing country in the world. You see mountain goats. One of the guys in our group had a mountain caribou tag. He shot a mountain caribou, and then and it's just beautiful there. So the last day, I got to tell this story because up until that point we had seen 10 brown bears, and we didn't have any, I would say, close encounters. One day we had one at about 90 yards. We had pushed out of the alders, and he kind of came around, and I ranged him at about 90 yards. So, but the last day, I had not shot a deer yet, and it was kind of like one of those days. It was like D-Day, right? You got to get it done. Mm-hmm. And so I went in, and with my good buddy Cody, who was one of my childhood best friends, and then another guy named Mike, who was in our hunting group as well. And we got up on the island, and we started glassing up. We started seeing deer immediately. And I was sitting there, and I had my binoculars on my tripod, and I was looking at this 3-point buck. And I was thinking, trying to figure out what way's the wind going, how are we going to get in on this deer. And just to my left, probably at about, I would say maybe 50 yards, you start to hear kind of the alders kind of cracking a little bit and moving.
Oh, geez.
So I turn over and I look, and my buddy Cody goes, "Yeah, I think there's some deer off to our left here." So I turn around and I look, and of course, when you start to see alders that are 8 to 10 feet tall laying over, you realize that's probably not, 180, 200-pound Sitka blacktail deer. So what we turned around and saw was, you could see, we didn't see the bear, but we saw the path that he was making in the alders. And the wind was coming towards us, so he did not get our scent. He couldn't wind us, but he could hear us because we were talking. So I dropped my bow. I had a 10 millimeter in my pack, so I reached around in my holster underneath my arm, had my 10 millimeter ready. My buddy Mike had a 45, and then Cody, my buddy behind me, all he had was his bow. So he knocked an arrow, and the three of us were in there, standing there in a triangle. And we were just waiting because this bear was coming right at us. And all of a sudden I could see the silhouette of his head come through. And right as he came through, there was basically an imaginary line there that I said, if he crosses this plane, it's defense, life, or property at that point, which is the way Alaska defines DLP of a brown bear. If it's your self-defense, if it's your life or your property, you can take him in that event. And he never did cross that line. He came in, he got up on his back feet, he hopped up a little bit, saw who we were, and we yelled at him, and he ran off. But it was nothing short of 10 paces, that brown bear, and we figured him to be at least a 9-foot brown bear coming to us. So, it was, I would say, one of the most nerve-wracking times I've ever been in the woods. I was shaking, and my heart didn't stop racing for 30 minutes after that.
I bet. That's crazy.
Yeah. So anyway, that day we ended up getting on the mountain, and I ended up getting 2 bucks, and it was just an awesome day to be on that island, and had 2 of my good buddies there to help me pack them off. So Kodiak was just awesome, and I think I would definitely do it again. I think I maybe do it a little differently, but I definitely would go back and do Kodiak Island. So
nice.
Yeah, and then lastly,
it's definitely something that I've been wanting to do it. It's like one of those things every year I'm like, all right, I'll do it next year.
Yeah.
I'll do it next year. I'm going to be freaking 50 before I get over there.
Yeah. Well, there was a couple guys in our group, a couple more, elderly guys that were, I would say, one of them was probably in his mid-60s and did a couple days of breaking that brush and getting up, and he ended up shooting a pretty nice 3x3. So, the thing about Kodiak Island is you start at sea level and you're probably never going to go above 2,000 feet, right? And that's just the reality. But the ugly part is that first 1,000 feet might take you 3 hours to get through it. So, it's just
rough.
rough.
I've heard that by several people.
Yeah.
Actually, Austin had invited me to go on that, or asked me if I wanted to go on that hunt. A couple of years ago, and I tell him I keep telling him I want to go, but just haven't been able to do it.
Yeah, it's one of those hunts that we went in October. The rut tends to start later in October and November, which is obviously one of the better times to hunt. But I think if you can just get there, you're going to have a great experience. Whether you're there for the rut, early part of the rut, or even later. So. Yeah, and then
sounds like. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and then just my last trip. So the one beauty about Montana is, and most that know this, when you buy a general elk and deer license, it's good from archery all the way through rifle season. So, because I didn't connect on my elk in Montana in September, I went back in November over Thanksgiving for a week and spent some time with my family, and went out one day and ended up getting a cow elk. So I was able to put some elk meat in the freezer, and then spent the next 3 days hunting with my brother up basically just south of Canada, where we grew up hunting with my dad, and chasing rut and mule deer for 3 days is just a blast up there. And that country it's nothing like hunting southwest Montana. North central Montana is very flat. It's very plains. It remind you of like North Dakota. The wind blows 70 miles an hour, and it's minus 30 degrees the wind chill up there. But my brother, I was more insistent on helping him get a buck, and we ended up turning up a nice, typical 4x4 whitetail, and he ended up hammering that. So that was fun. I didn't end up filling my deer tag, which was okay because I'd already had an elk in the freezer at that point or in my truck. So, so just a busy year, and had a lot of great experiences, had a lot of fun. And I don't think I would have traded any of those hunts for anything, even though, like I said, I wasn't successful on quite a few of them. It wasn't about, putting a tag around an animal that made any of those hunts successful. So,
yeah, it's kind of hard. Like, this is the first year in probably 15 years, maybe longer. No, I'd say about 15 years. That I didn't fill 85% of the tags that I had.
Really?
I've been 85% average or better. Yeah.
Wow.
I've had a stellar run.
That's awesome.
And
you're doing what, like 10 to 12 hunts a year, right? Aren't you?
What's that?
You're doing like 10 to 12 or 15 hunts a year, right?
I'd say, the last few years since I had my son, it's been about 7 to 10.
Okay.
But prior to that, it was 10 to 12. Yeah. Yeah. So, I've managed to fill a lot of tags, and it's kind of a double-edged sword because you're like, oh well, look at all the success you had, blah blah blah. I've been feeling like garbage this year because of that. I'm like, did I lose my mojo? Did I lose a step? Am I getting? I mean, I'm not old. I'm only 42. But, it's like, am I just not cut out for this shit anymore?
Yeah.
I don't know, You start doubting yourself. It's kind of a shitty feeling. Like, I guess when you get used to a certain level of performance and certain level of success, you expect it to be that way all the time.
Yeah.
I guess I would imagine like a quarterback who's had a freaking amazing season, an amazing career, then have a really shitty season, and you start, should I freaking retire? Should I put it up?
Yeah, it almost becomes an expectation, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've been feeling like that because I started off the year. Well, I mean, if you count hunting here in January and February, so I didn't get barely any time to hunt for myself in January for deer in Arizona. I was busy helping other people. I got maybe, I think, 3 full days of hunting myself. I think I went on 3 or 4 stalks. I shot a javelina in February, and I was pretty much guiding the rest of February for javelina for clients.
Mm-hmm.
Then I didn't hunt all spring. That's not true. I did quite a bit of coyote hunting. I had a really great year in coyote hunting, but I don't usually count that.
That's like gravy, isn't it? Just because I do that a lot here too, man.
I don't really put that into the numbers that I keep track of. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a really good predator all year. But then, so July, my big game season started. I went to California. Missed a giant buck. It was a shitty shot. Long shitty shot. Should have never taken it anyway. I killed a hog. From there, I went to Utah. I skipped the early season here in Arizona. Went to Utah. Only was there for 3.5 days. So I found one deer that I wanted to. I literally made one stalk that in the 3 days that I was there. I found one deer that I was interested in shooting. And I almost connected. It was actually the first day that we were there too. Then I was supposed to go, let's see, that was August. So September, I went to Oregon to chase rosies. And second night or third night, I can't remember, I shot a bull, but I hit him super low, like flesh wound across the brisket. So obviously never recovered him. He was actually bugling the next day. Never got a chance to connect on another one. Then I came back. It was September. Oh, I had a client here, and we had the most terrible year. I had 2 elk clients this year, and they were both in 7 East, which is quite possibly the worst unit in Arizona right now because they've killed off so many of the elk. It used to be a stellar unit. It used to be an amazing unit, but they're trying to save the aspen trees. So they've like tripled the amount of tags in there for like the last 7, 8 years. Oh, and
that doesn't help.
It's absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible hunting. And we had some opportunities. We still had opportunities. We just didn't connect. So I helped the guy out on that hunt. And then, let's see, I was supposed to go in October. I was supposed to go to Idaho. So I really can't fault myself for not filling those tags, but I didn't end up going. Chad Roberts and I were going together. He ended up going by himself and shooting a bull, nice bull.
Gotcha.
But I went to New York. Instead because the reason why I didn't go to Idaho was because my wife's cousin was getting married and we're close and whatnot, so I didn't want to miss the wedding.
Yeah.
So I went to New York instead to the wedding, had a few days to hunt, shot a buck and a doe with my recurve, which was awesome because I had never killed one with a recurve. I hadn't hunted with a recurve since the 80s. So that was a really cool experience and probably the highlight of my season thus far. Got back from that. And I went with Charles Whitman to South Dakota. He came with me to where I usually hunt there. I run hunts off of a giant cattle ranch over there. And man, we were on deer. I just everything just kept falling apart on me. Like, so the last day, Charles got frustrated because he wounded a buck, probably the biggest buck we had seen the whole trip. He shot at it and the buck turned right as the arrow got to me. I got it on video. You got to really slow it down to see it, but the buck turns and the arrow shoots him like right up the ass.
Texas hard, huh?
Well, if it wasn't Texas hard, it would have been better, but it was kind of basically shot his nuts off almost.
Shoot.
Yeah. Anyway, we refound the buck, and I stalked him into about 15 yards, and he was just about to shoot him, and the buck just jumps up and whirls out of there. And we've never found him again. I was Henry. So I don't know if he's dead. I don't know.
Yeah.
He was bleeding a lot, so I don't know. But so we never recovered that anyway. So Charles got frustrated because he had wounded that big ass buck, and he just had so many opportunities and didn't capitalize. He ends up shooting a little forky horn the last morning. So now it's the last afternoon, and I still haven't killed anything. I've managed to shoot a yucca instead of a deer. The only time I pulled my bow back, I was like, I could sneak it past this yucca, and I didn't. I hit the damn yucca. Anyway, so last night I'm like, we're gonna go hunt this different area. There's this it's like creek bottom, and it's just open plains. It's completely different than what we've been hunting all week long. We were hunting these cedar breaks before that, so now it's just wide open plains. And I had an opportunity in there the year before, and I said, well, I know what these deer do. They're all bedded in this creek bottom here, and then right before the evening, they start filtering out of this thing, and they come up onto these fields, and then outside of the property there's winter wheat and alfalfa and all this other stuff. They're going to those areas, Yeah. So I'm going to ambush. I'm going to set myself up in this spot. I know this really good spot in the creek bottom. Sure as shit, I get there at like noon. Just got done packing his deer out. Got there about noon. I said, all right, you guys go, glass around, whatever. Here's the radio. Contact me if you guys find something that's in a good spot for me to stalk. But I'm going to go sit down here till the night. And it's like 10 degrees. It's blowing like 20 miles an hour. Freaking cold as shit. I'm all bundled up like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. I got my Sika puffy on with a jet stream over it.
Yeah, multiple layers.
And like 3 layers of freaking base layers and puffy pants and all this stuff. And I'm just sitting there like, looking like the guy from Christmas Story. But so it's basically like a little cut that feeds down into this creek bottom. So I'm sitting in this cut, so I have the terrain is blocking where the view from where the deer were coming from, basically. So I could just keep popping my head over and looking up the cut or looking up the creek bottom to see if there's anything coming. So a couple hours passes and I hadn't seen any deer yet, and I just laid back because I was just getting tired. I laid back and I closed my eyes for a second, and that second turned into like 25 minutes. And I pop up and I'm like, oh shit, I fell asleep. and I'm like, oh my God. I look down at my phone, I'm like, oh shit, it's like 3:30, the deer are moving.
Yeah, for sure. Prime time.
Pop my head over, and there's 4 does right across like 100 yards from me. And I'm looking at the does, and I look down, and there's this giant buck. Oh my God. He probably, not score-wise, he wouldn't be the biggest buck, but he's wider than anything I've ever shot in my life. Probably 32, maybe 34, just laid out. Just wide.
Wow.
But he was cranking blood, so he probably would have scored, maybe, I don't know, 180-ish.
That's a good deer right there.
Oh yeah, this is a hell of a good deer. Just dark chocolate horns, and he's closer to me. But I'm thinking to myself, shit, these does are up on the side of the hill, and he's down in the bottom. Like, he's gonna go up to them does. He's looking at him. I start willing him. I'm like, come this way, buddy. You want to come this way? Sure as shit, he starts walking my way. And I'm like, okay, he's gonna get to this spot, and I'm gonna have a 65, 70-yard shot. I'm just gonna send it, Anyway, he starts getting right about the part where he's going to come through this opening where I'm going to be able to shoot him. He's kind of like stops, and then he turns, and he comes towards me. So he's coming towards me, but I can't shoot him because I got a bush in my way, and it's like a cut bank that I'm in. So the closer he gets, the less and less of his body I see. Now all I see is antlers walking, and he's probably only like 40 yards from me. But all I can see is the tips of his antlers. Below me were these like willows or alders, or I don't even know what the hell they are, but these little sapling trees, basically. And I had originally set up here because I saw some rubs on it. I said, if a buck comes down this, he's going to stop and rub on this shit before he heads out to the field. Sure as shit, he went right to those right to those, saplings, and he starts rubbing the saplings. I can see the tree just going back and forth like that. So I drew back, and I come over the top of the cut bank, and he's right there, 30 yards, and I can't shoot him because the tree, he decided to go around the other side, and he's facing right at me, and the tree's between me and him. So I'm at full draw for 2 minutes. I'm starting to shake.
Yeah.
And he's just beating the shit out of his tree, and he never gives me a shot. So I let down and I sit back down. And I'm just sitting there watching the tree do this back and forth, swaying back and forth for at least 10 minutes. He beat up the same tree for about 10 minutes. So I'm just sitting there watching the tree, and all of a sudden I hear something over my left shoulder. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? And I kind of turn my head a little bit, and I can see ears coming over the bank. Those 4 does fed up over to me, and they were 5 yards. 5 yards from me. The doe pops her head over, and she's looking right at me, and she's trying to figure what bobbing her head, trying to figure out what's going on right there. I'm just frozen solid. He's still beating the shit out of the tree, has no clue. She's looking at me, and I'm like, now, this has all gone down. I am freezing at this point. I'm starting to shake because I can't control I'm so cold.
Yeah,
I'm starting
core body temps down.
Yeah, it's just bad. I've just been getting beat up with the wind for 3+ hours now. I was laying on the ground, and so she stops looking at me, and she kind of trots off and runs down to the back into the creek bottom around in front of me. So now she's out of sight. So I go to draw back because I know she's going to pop out here. When she pops out here, he's going to go right over to her. I'm thinking in my head, I can't get my bow drawn back. I'm so cold.
You're that
and I'm
cold.
shaking so much, and I got so much shit on. I'm trying to muscle it over, and I can't do it. 4 times I tried. Now she's in front of me, and she stopped, and she's looking back at me, and I don't want to draw back with her looking at me. And I'm like, fuck, if she busts, he's going to probably run with her. And I probably should have just, did one of those, crazy sky draws and just got drawn back. And when he popped out and shoot him, hindsight's 20/20. I can hear him breathing, and he's lip curling, and I can hear him moaning. I don't know if you ever heard of freaking when they're lip curling and stuff.
Yeah, that sound they make. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear him doing that. I'm like, son of a bitch. And he steps out at 20 yards. And he's looking right at her. And he's just kicking his head back, sniffing the air. And now I'm just frozen. Now I'm like, shit, if I try to draw back now, I'm screwed. But maybe he'll just keep walking, and I could get a quarter-inch shot out of him, He turns and he looks right at me. Looks at her, looks at me, looks at her, and then he takes off running. Ugh. So now I jump up and I do a sky draw, and I guess because I could get drawn back now because I'm not trying to do a nice slow concealed draw. He jumps up and trots up the hill across from me, across the creek bottom, and I had ranged over there a bunch of times, and I'm like, okay, he's at 80 yards, and I shot at 80, and it went right between, right under his legs, so close that he jumped straight up. Uh-huh. He was probably at 90. Or
wow,
87 or something like that, and he took off, and that was my only solid opportunity. And I was like, oh my god, I cannot believe that happened to me. I'm like, I've never had that happen.
Sure. Yeah,
last year actually, when I shot that buck, that's right there, that's a South Dakota buck. Uh-huh. When I shot him. When I went to shoot him the first time, I went to draw back, and I couldn't get drawn back too because my clothes were in the way, and I was freezing cold that morning too. But I wasn't I was in an awkward position, and then once I got on my knees, it was easy for me to draw back, and I shot him at 75 yards. But
wow,
it was just heartbreaking because he was such a cool buck, man. He was such a cool buck.
Yeah, when I was in Montana on my archery elk hunt, we generally elk hunt the same area every year, and we see deer up there, but never anything of any quality trophy class size or anything. But this year there was a band of 5 bucks running together. One had a triple fork. He was I think a 7x6. typical mule deer, and then there was a 4x4, really boxy frame, probably 26, 27 wide, really deep forks. I put them in the 170 to 180 class range, and you just never see deer of that caliber in this area that we elk hunt. So it was an afternoon. We were coming back from our morning hunt, and I had glassed up these deer. I'm like, well, I'm going to go put a stock on this buck. He was bedded in sage. I had no idea. I looped around. I got above him at 60 yards and was just sitting there waiting for him to make a move. Probably was sitting there for probably 30 minutes. All my buddies were down below videoing it because the buck was actually more, attuned to my buddies down below than he didn't even know I was there. And
right.
I start slowly stalking in a little closer to see if I could cut the distance. And there was two other bucks, a fork, and that big triple fork was off to my right. They got up. I didn't even see them in the sage. They popped up and alerted me. So I turn around, I look at them, and I see that triple fork, and I'm like, man, he's a nice buck too. So I range him. He was at like 80-something. So I was already set at 65 because I knew the sage that 4x4 was sitting under. I went and I adjusted my sight to 85, and I went to draw back on that one, and that 4x4 stands up and turns around and looks at me. And when I realized how big he was, I went back to my bow, and I tried to get back to 65, and by that time I went to draw, and he busted out. And I still have faint nightmares about that buck running away because you just, it's that typical seeing them go over the skyline and how really big they are, and then they just kind of go over and down. It was that same thing, and
that's why I freaking hate sliders, man.
I know,
fucking hate them.
Yeah,
I hate them. To me, I hear more stories like you just told me, or the ones where, oh shit, I forgot to freaking adjust and I shot over them or shot under them.
Yeah.
Then that, and then the other thing, it's just a license for you to want to shoot further.
It is,
I could dial her up to 120. We'll make the shot.
Yeah,
I make it all the time in the backyard.
You're right. Yeah,
I'm against sliders. I think they're great for 3D shoots. You know? But
yeah, I've been shooting that option sight that Option Archery puts out, and I've had that sight for years, and I knew Dan when he was a trophy taker, and I've had a lot of success using that sight. I mean, I generally don't ever use my fixed pins. I'm typically always on my slider, and for the most part, I mean, my tape goes out to 110. My bubble shoots at 120. I won't shoot that far because I know if I'm at 120, I can get to 80, and if I'm at 80, I can probably get to 60. So I'm going to always try to work my way in to where I know I feel comfortable ethically to take the shot. But if
I have a sight that can shoot 120, I'm shooting 120.
Yeah,
that's me. That's why I don't. I mean,
if I've got a place where I can't cut the distance and I'm at 100, I'm gonna let it fly if it's the right shot, right? And I'll have no problem doing that. But if I know I can try to get closer, I'm gonna always try to get closer if I can and cut some of the margin for error out if possible. But they are finicky, and that's I've had that happen a couple times, and that's just a part of hunting. It's that's why we do it because we love it. But all that equipment out there is only as good as we know how to operate it and use it. So wow, that's a cool story, man.
Yeah, it was rough. I'll tell you what. So what? After that, I haven't hunted for myself since then. I went hunting with a fellow Californian that I took on a late season archery hunt here, also in that same unit, 7 East.
Okay.
And I swear to God, man, I used to see 50 to 80 elk in a day.
Wow.
And I think the 7 days we were there, 5 days. It was a 5-day hunt. 5 days of hunting, we've seen 5 bulls and 12 cows.
Jeez.
Mind you, one of the bulls was like a 340, and we got him to about 60 yards on him. But
oh wow. Jeez.
He didn't have a clear shot. But that was tough, man. It was a tough hunt. I felt so bad for him. He was busting his ass. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things. We busted our ass. I mean, I put miles on the truck, and we looked over so much country, and I mean, my eyes felt like they were bleeding. I glassed so much.
Yeah. That's what you got to do, though. I mean, to find those better bulls like that in the later part of the season, you got to sit behind glass and try to turn them up, you know.
Yep. Yeah, it was rough. And then, and then I just went on the sheep hunt. I'm going to go back and help him if he doesn't tag one out this weekend. But, yeah, and it was just another rough. I just feel like this season's I feel like I'm snake bit, but when I hear myself telling the stories, I'm like, it's not so bad. It's just, it just feels bad.
Yeah. It really felt like a long year. I don't know, maybe for me, because I was all over the place, but some of these trips, like I said, I did 20 days on the road. I shot up to Montana for about 10 days and then went down to New Mexico, and it just, I don't know, it just felt like so long. And I guess when you're gone for those periods of time, you look back on it, and of course it's like a blur, but when you're in it, it's just, it is. It's like every emotion, known to man. I mean, you're in elk, and then you're not, and then you get close to a bull, and you don't get a shot, and it's just, you're up and down all the time. And, if you're anyone like, I'm sure like you or like me, you take that stuff pretty hard, but, you pick yourself up and you move on to the next hunt. But it just, it's, if all we did was go out and never, punch a tag, then, we'd have to buy meat from the store. And part of my reason is I love the experience, which is a big part of it. But I also got to feed people's mouths too. So, so that's the other part of it. That is the reason why I do it. So, there's definitely that aspect of it to it as well. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. So you're done for the year then? Yeah.
So turkey season, false turkey season goes through this weekend. I'm going to try to get out this weekend and see if I can't turn up a few birds. And then, basically my next season will be trade shows. This year, currently, I did Dallas Safari, Sheep, Western Hunting Expo, and then the Rendezvous in Boise. This coming year, I'm going to work the First Light booth at the Sheep Show in Reno. So this year, because SCI is coming back to Reno, it pushed the Sheep Show out into February. So Sheep and the Hunting Expo are actually back-to-back in February when SCI comes to Reno in January. So I'm probably just going to do the Sheep Show and the Western Hunting Expo this year. And then First Light reached out and wanted to see if I could help them at the Sheep Show. So Reno's about a 6-hour drive, so I'll buzz up there for that. And I usually go anyway, do some podcasts. It's always good to go to the shows and catch up with, buddies and everyone else in the industry and do that. So, so I'll hit some of the trade shows, and then, from there it'll be spring, and then I'm basically back into, doing pig hunts, and I'm going to try to line up more clients this year. I did successfully take out my first Thule elk hunter this year, and we got a nice 7x7 this year, so that was cool. Just a lot of pig hunts lined up, maybe some turkey hunts, and then the only thing I have on the books for 19 is I'm going back to Alaska. I booked a near Peninsula and Aniak area for a moose. So me and my buddy are going to go up and do a DIY drop camp moose hunt, 15-day moose hunt with our bows in mid-September. So we're looking forward to doing that. And that's obviously going to be a grind for 15 days, 2 guys trying to get 2 moose out. It's going to be basically drop in on a float plane, meet back here this day, this time in 15 days, and we're going to have 2 moose packed out. So, but he's the kind of guy, he's like me, he's up to, that challenge. So I'm looking forward to that. Awesome. And then, who knows what we'll draw. I apply in, like 14 states. So, I'll try to plan my fall season to where I don't overlap too many things, but, may draw a few tags here or there and make the best of it. So, 19 is going to be busy again, but, always looking forward to what's around the corner and what's next. So,
Wait. I have no clue what I'm doing for 19. 0. I still got quite a bit of hunting though, so
for sure.
Actually, my hunting gets better now.
Yeah, I mean, sheep and deer
here in Arizona for the next 2 months.
Yep.
So, and do quite a bit of javelina hunting, which I always love doing. It's fun. It's a good time of year to be out there and nothing else going on. I don't feel like I'm taken away from anything else. So. Yeah. Sweet. Well, cool, man. I'm glad we finally got together. You and I have been talking about doing a podcast together for like 2 years.
I know. It's always crazy just trying to align schedules. You'd think you'd be able to cut an hour out of your schedule to do it, and it's tough. We all lead busy lives, so.
Well, good deal,
Yeah.
man. I wish you luck on your turkey hunts there, and I'll probably see you at the Western Expo. I'm probably not going to go to anything else this year. I got way too much shit going on, and we're already like booking up for next year, so I don't really need to go and do any like sales stuff.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah. That's such a great show. When I think about all the trade shows, the reason I like that show, I mean, the sheep show's a great show too, but it's a niche group, right? And sheep hunters are, they're extreme. They're different than the Safari Club guys. The Safari Club guys are typically, they have a lot of money and they like to go do, international hunts, which is cool, which is nothing wrong with that. But what I like about the Western Hunting Expo is it's just Western big game, right? And of course, you got the shot, the $5 tags, and all the vendors are there. All the names are there, and it's just a great show. Salt Lake always hosts a really great forum there, so I enjoy that show. I think you and I connected a little bit last year as well at that show, and just hooked up a little bit. So, yeah, that's a great show.
Cool, man. Well, I look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah.
And, good luck. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Just one last thing, just a plug for my podcast. So, you can find it RNA Outdoors. I'm on iTunes. I'm on Podbean. So you can find it also on Stitcher as well. So, take a look, subscribe. I'll probably release this one along with you. I'm trying to record it as well. And then we've got all the social media outlets. You can find us. It's either RNA Outdoors or RNA stands for Rod and Arrow Outdoors. So you can find it there. Check us out. And if you like what you hear, subscribe. And, we usually release 1 to 2 a month. I don't really set any type of format, but I can't crank them out quite like you do, John. But but I do try to do, at least a couple a month and get them out there and keep people, somewhat interested in what we've got going on. So
nice. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're doing a good job with it.
Yeah.
I enjoy your podcast.
Yeah.
I guess if you're going to put this on yours, I might as well plug mine as well.
Yeah.
If you guys want to check out my podcast and you're a fan of Lucas's, it's interviews with the hunting masters, and pretty much find me anything. I'm on seriously every player there is, so check it out.
For sure.
Well, cool, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, good talking to you, John. Good luck on your hunts, and maybe I'll see you in Salt Lake in February.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Take care.
Take it easy. Bye.
Bye. Hey, everyone. This is Lucas Paw, host of the RNA Outdoors podcast. Please check out Podbean and iTunes. If you have an iPhone or iPad, go to the podcast app on your device, search for RNA Outdoors, and hit the purple subscribe button. When doing this, it will automatically upload when new podcasts are loaded, and they will download into your queue. For Android users, you can access the podcast through Podbean, Stitcher, or use our website, www.rnaoutdoors.com/podcast. In addition, under the RNA Outdoors podcast channel, please leave a review and a 5-star rating. These reviews help boost our popularity and outreach. You can also follow us on our social media outlets, Twitter at RNA Outdoors, Facebook, RNA Outdoors, and Instagram, Rod and Arrow Outdoors. All links are in the show notes as well. If you like what you've heard, we hope you'll pass along our channel to your friends and colleagues. Keep up the good fight. We cannot sit by and watch the public lands devoted to wildlife protection wither away. There's simply too much at stake. Make your voice heard, speak up, and get involved with conservation efforts, and know that every little bit helps. As we say on the mountain, go farther, stay longer.